So welcome again to the Grassroots webinar. I had a lot of requests over the last couple weeks to cover advantage and how to use it, when to recognize it, all of that kind of stuff. And so we're going to take probably about 15 or so minutes and just talk through some of the considerations for the proper use of advantage. And then we'll have a whole bunch of video clips that we can look at and see some good examples of advantage and some areas where perhaps advantage should not have been utilized in that moment. So here we go. So first, just a direct quote from the laws of the game. The referee may allow play to continue when the team against which an offense has been committed will benefit from such an advantage and penalizes the original offense if that anticipated advantage does not ensue at the time. So that's a direct quote from the laws of the game, basically giving the referee the ability to decide not to call a foul if the team that would have been awarded the free kick would benefit from allowing play to continue. Now, that's a very, very broad statement, and I guess to some degree how you decide that, if it's actually to the team's benefit or not, is what we're going to spend the evening discussing. It's a very subjective idea. Some teams would rather just keep the ball going all the time. Some teams would rather have the free kick. So understand that advantage sort of by itself is very subjective. What we're going to go over this evening is the things you can be evaluating and thinking about when deciding if you want to play advantage, knowing there are going to be some external factors involved as well. So there's two primary factors that we take into consideration advantage. These are not the considerations. These are just the two bigger picture factors. The first is game control. The reason we call fouls is to establish match control. That's why we blow the whistle, so that when players do things that are wrong or going to hurt somebody or whatever it is, we can stop the game and indicate that's not something we're going to allow to happen. So the sheer nature of calling fouls is to establish game control, to establish a fair way to play the game so that everybody is safe. At the same time, soccer is a flowing game. The ideal match has as few stoppages as possible. And so where possible, we want to allow game flow so that we're not having a real disruptive game. Obviously, the players are involved in that. If they're fouling everybody all the time, that's not your fault. But where we can, advantage helps us to balance between game control and game flow. We only want to apply advantage as much as possible, while also making sure we're not losing control of the game. So whenever we're thinking about this, and we're going to go in and talk about in some detail the actual considerations we want you looking for, please remember that if any point you feel like game control is not where you want it to be, then we probably don't want to have as many advantages, because basically you're choosing not to call a foul, and that's a risk. And so if we have a game that's good under control, then yeah, we can take the risk of not calling a foul. If we are losing game control to some degree, then we might want to not take the risk in that situation. So again, when evaluating risk, the big thing we want to think about is the severity of the foul. You might have heard the term trifling before. You may have heard trifling or negligent contact, things like that. If you have trifling contact, minimal contact, that's a kind of a low risk foul. The higher the severity of the foul, the more risk there is involved in playing advantage, because you're choosing to let a foul of high severity go without blowing the whistle. So the more severe the foul, the less likely we're going to have advantage to be played. For smaller fouls, it's more likely that an opportunity for advantage exists. Of course, we'll talk about the actual considerations here in a couple of minutes. But please, recognize that anytime you're going to apply advantage, you're deliberately choosing not to call a foul that has taken place, and there is some risk involved in that, because that player who got fouled might be frustrated, might get up and retaliate. If we have a lot of fouls happening and you're playing advantage frequently, now you're having a team that's feeling like the other team's not being punished. Their frustration may rise. So it's really careful, or we have to be really careful when we think about the risk involved with choosing not to call a foul so that we can play advantage. So now we get into the actual considerations, how you can read play and analyze whether or not an advantage might be played. We call them the 4 Ps. And, some of you are probably familiar with this. The first one is possession of the ball. The laws of the game say possession or clear ability to gain possession. So obviously if a player doesn't have possession, but he's the closest one to the ball and would have gotten there very clearly, then we consider that the same as having possession of the ball. So if the player who was had a foul committed against them doesn't have the ball or the clear ability to gain possession of the ball, then we're not going to call advantage because there's no advantage that is possible. The team has lost the ball as a result of a foul. You want to call a foul. So if the player who was fouled or one of their teammates has possession of the ball, we might have an opportunity to call advantage. The second involves personnel. And when I say personnel, I mean both attackers and defenders. We want to look for where there are numerical advantages. So if we have a 2-on-2 or a 3-on-2 attackers with more numbers than defenders, then we might have a scenario where advantage is present. If it's 4 defenders and 1 attacker, probably not a very good advantage. So we probably don't want to think about that because there's not much that attacking player is going to be able to accomplish when he's going against 4 defenders. So we want to be thinking about not only the number of personnel, so again, is there a numerical advantage, but what are the different skill sets of the players? If it's the center back has the ball and is dribbling on the touchline and gets fouled, what's the chance that he can keep going and do something productive with the ball? Versus is it a crafty midfielder or maybe a really fast winger? So those are the things we want to think about. If you know that one player is really fast and everybody else is slow, maybe we let that player take an advantage and see what he can do. Those are all things we want to be thinking about a little bit. So it's not just the numerical advantage, but to the degree that you're able, also evaluating the skill sets of the players as well. But the big one, just for the sake of ease right now, is going to be, do they have a numerical advantage? Do they have more attackers that can go forward than there are defenders back? If that's the case, great. Another thing we want to look for, and this has to do with personnel, is do they have options? Are there options for that attacking player if you choose not to call a foul? If they're pinned down way in the corner, they get fouled, but they keep the ball, and some of the other factors are present, but they don't really have any options to play the ball, then maybe there's not an advantage present. And when we're talking about options, of course, we mean other teammates to distribute the ball to. So if they don't have any options, the personnel is probably not going to support wanting to play advantage. The next is the potential for an attack. This is the most subjective, but the most important. We have to think about how much potential for an attack there is. Again, there's going to be a personnel element to it. Are they outnumbered or do they have a numerical advantage? Are there options? How far from the goal are they? Those kinds of things are a little bit more subjective, but things that we need to think about. And then along with that is your proximity to the opponent's goal. All these things sort of factor in together. If you are close to your opponent's goal, you've got potential for an attack, and you've got the personnel, and you've got the ball, then yeah, hey, these are all indicating we should probably call an advantage. We probably don't want to have advantage in a team's defending penalty area. So if a center back gets the ball at his feet, he's 100 yards from the attacking goal he wants to go towards, and somebody fouls him, highly unlikely we want to call advantage because he's so far from goal, you can't really suggest that it's a potential for attack. And so those are all factors that play in together a little bit in that situation. So before we move on, are there any questions on these 4 considerations for advantage? The 4 Ps is a quick and easy way to remember what that looks like. Possession of the ball, personnel, potential for attack, and proximity to the opponent's goal. So a question here, would you call advantage more in high school game versus a youth game? In my mind, those are both the same. So I don't know what you mean by a youth game versus a high school game. But I think you can consider the personnel here. As I said a moment ago, you can consider their skill set and decide if do they have the skill set to actually go and create a potential for an attack. If they're 10 years old and they're still figuring out how to kick the ball, it's probably going to have to be in the goal mouth with somebody about to kick it in before we think about calling advantage. The older the kids get, the better their technical skills get, the more they understand the game, the more we can think about things like advantage. I hope that answers your question. Any other questions on these considerations before we move on? All right, then I'll go ahead and move us ahead. The next concept we want to talk about a little bit here is wait and see. Now, when you have an advantage opportunity present, right when you know about that the foul is going to get called, you may be able to identify right away that there's an advantage situation present, and you can award advantage. Other times, it's not going to be as clear, and so there's a concept that we talk about called wait and see, which is basically assess the situation. Wait 2 or 3 seconds to see if something can develop. And if it does, great. Go ahead and play advantage. If it doesn't, stop the play and award the free kick. So you don't have to decide right away if advantage is present. You can pause for a moment, wait and see what happens with the next couple touches of the ball. And if it looks like the attack's not going to develop, go ahead and blow the whistle and award a free kick for that original offense back at the place that it happened. So if you wait and see a little bit and then you decide to blow the whistle and they've moved the ball 10 yards up the field, but advantage doesn't develop, we want to go back and take the free kick back at the original spot of the foul. If it does develop after you've waited a couple of seconds, that's when we want you to signal for advantage. So the big thing here is if you're going to apply wait and see, don't signal. The worst scenario for us is to signal advantage, have it not develop, and then blow the whistle and bring it back. That creates frustration and consternation from the team that's going to be called guilty of an offense, and we can avoid that frustration by just simply waiting and not giving any kind of signal. You take a couple of seconds, see what's going to happen, and then go ahead and give the signal if you decide an advantage is present, or blow the whistle and go on back to the original spot of the foul. Any questions on that wait and see concept? One other thing that we want to think about is something called the phases of play. Now, this is a little bit more of an advanced subject, but the basic premise here is that we don't want to allow an advantage. The advantage is received or gained, if you will, meaning, the right player got the ball and they're off and running and great, we have an advantage. And then the next player tries to make a pass, hits it, it goes out of bounds, and then we come back and award the free kick. We don't want to see that happen. So once an advantage has been realized, meaning player A got fouled, but they still have the ball, or player B gets the ball and now we're off and running, now we're into the next phase of play. That means the advantage has been received. It has been recognized. Now we're back into active play. If somebody screws it up and just kicks it out of bounds, or they miss a shot that they take, or they lose the ball for whatever reason, we do not come back and give the original foul, because we have moved on to the next phase of play. So once an advantage has been realized, that's it. It's over. We don't get to come back now if a player hits the ball, kicks it out of bounds, screws up, whatever it is. So that's an important thing to think about. Don't signal until the advantage has been realized, because once it's been realized, there's no bringing it back after that. Question here, does the severity of the foul ever affect the amount of time you wait and see? Absolutely, but I think the severity of the foul is actually going to factor in whether or not we're even thinking about advantage. For me, if we're going to wait and see, it means because the game is comfortable enough for us to even think about advantage. If the severity of the foul is so high that we're worried about a wait and see, we shouldn't even be thinking about advantage. We should just blow the whistle and be done with it. Best practice is to signal and yell out advantage, or just signal. It depends on the situation, Ron. It's a good question. Oftentimes referees can look a little out of touch when it's not a big moment in the game and yet they're yelling really loud. So if it's just a simple little foul in the midfield everybody keeps the ball and they move on into an attack, and you're running down the field yelling out or screaming out advantage, you look like you're overreacting to a situation. So if it's a big moment, if it's a big foul, you maybe you're going to give a yellow card for it or something like that, but you decide to give an advantage, that's a good moment to yell, probably because other people are going to be yelling because of the nature of the foul. If the game's quiet, everybody's quiet, nobody's really reacting to anything, maybe you can just signal because they're going to be looking to you to see if you're going to call a foul anyway. So we had a question here. I've noticed sometimes if a match is heated, sometimes pausing to wait and see gets more people upset than thinking you're missing something. Yeah, Joel, my suggestion would be there that if the game is heated, unless it's very, very apparent right away, you probably shouldn't be waiting to see in general. If a game is heated, it means there's a high risk to not calling a foul, which means you don't even want to be thinking about advantage unless it's plainly obvious. Everybody in the world needs to know that you're going to give advantage because everybody expects advantage to be given. If you're waiting and see, if you're applying the wait and see, it means the advantage probably isn't obvious. And if the game is heated, then we probably shouldn't even be thinking about advantage. Question here, if a foul warrants a yellow card and you play the advantage, can you come back at the next stoppage? I will talk about that on the next slide. Another question, can you talk about advantage signal with two hands versus the one hand signal? So it's a good question. The advantage signal has been historically to reach out with both hands. FIFA or IFAB changed that a couple years ago to just the one hand. Either is fine, quite honestly. I find the one hand can be slightly confusing because the one hand advantage also might look like a foul signal. And so whenever possible, if it's a big advantage, like, everybody expects a foul and you're going to give an advantage, two hands might be better. The one hand is if you're jogging and no one really expects a foul, then just a quick signal is fine. Everybody will get it. So that's the wait and see. The next is misconduct. Now, how we apply misconduct is completely independent from how we apply advantage. So if we choose to give advantage, that means we're choosing not to stop play. It doesn't absolve the person who's guilty of the offense. And so, in fact, with advantage, we want to be thinking about that for persistent offenses as well. If somebody's been guilty of persistent offenses or is starting to get close, we want to be factoring in advantage, or in times that we've awarded advantage when they've been guilty of offense as well. So the idea of misconduct is completely separated from advantage. If you apply an advantage for a foul that requires a yellow card, at the next stoppage, stop the game, issue the yellow card. Make sure, so this is a challenging one. Sometimes, you'll give an advantage, the play will continue on, and maybe the ball doesn't go out for 15, 20, 30 seconds. So it's going to be a length of time that has transpired between when the foul happened and when you have to go back and issue the misconduct. So make sure when you do that you make a very public notice, stop, blow the whistle, isolate the player, point back maybe to where it happened on the field so that everybody can visually connect that player to that spot on the field, and then show the yellow card. Because oftentimes, particularly at the youth level, people will forget that you chose not to call a foul, and 30 seconds later, when you go to give a yellow card, they're going to be really upset. They don't understand why that player is getting a yellow card. Or they might not see who you're giving it to. There'll be lots of different scenarios where giving a caution after playing advantage, if time has elapsed, can be confusing. So make sure it's really clear who's getting it, and why they're getting it. For serious foul play offenses, you should almost never consider advantage. So if you're going to red card somebody for a serious foul play offense, meaning some sort of tackle or violent conduct or anything like that, you pretty much are never, ever going to apply advantage. The only time you're going to do that is if the ball's basically rolling into the goal when the offense occurs. So if someone, punches you in the face as you kick the ball into the back of the net, okay, maybe we're going to give advantage for the ball to roll in the back of the net before we deal with it. But more than likely, we can just say wait and see, oh, hey, look, it's in the goal now, red card after the goal is scored. So just be careful. If the severity of the offense is such that you're going to give a red card, it's highly unlikely that you're going to want to play advantage. So question here, if a player is injured from a foul, but the attacking team has the advantage, would you call the foul or let them play? It's a good question. I think a lot of it's going to depend on the severity of the injury. You know, if a player just has a knock and is down holding their foot, but the play is continued and the teams want to keep going and the attack wants to keep going, sure, go ahead and let it play. If somebody breaks their leg, probably we don't call advantage. If someone's screaming and rolling around on the ground, probably we don't call advantage. So just something to think about, like with misconduct. Question here, if applying the advantage leads to a goal, should the caution for the challenge still be given? Depends on what the caution was for. If you have a stopping a promising attack caution, meaning for a tactical foul, and they go on and score the goal, then the answer is no. If you have a red card offense for denying a goal scoring opportunity, and they go on to score the goal, the laws of the game state that you should give a yellow card. If you play advantage on a red card for violent conduct or serious foul play, then the answer is yes, you go back for the red card. And if you have a yellow card offense for a reckless challenge and they go on and score the goal, then the answer is yes, we still give a caution. So basically, we uphold our cautionable offenses and sending off offenses for those physical fouls, meaning slide tackles, reckless challenges, things like that. If it's a tactical foul, then we downgrade it. Does that make sense, Eduardo? Okay. Question here, has anyone seen the planned IFAB law changes? Let's not talk about planned IFAB changes, please. We won't talk about new laws until they are actually new laws. All right, moving us along then. For assistant referees, it's important to note the same principles apply in your areas of direct responsibility, but only the referee can actually formally award an advantage. So if a scenario exists where advantage might be present, assistant referees, we want you to factor in all the same considerations, look for the 4 Ps, see if they're present or not, but you don't get to be the one that decides if advantage is present. That is something that is specifically referenced in Law 5, the responsibilities and powers of the referee, not the assistant referee. So you can choose not to put your flag up if you think there's an opportunity for advantage, but you can't actually be the one that says advantage. All right, any questions before we move on and watch some clips? All right, then here we go. So we're going to start with looking at some good uses of advantage, and we'll talk about why. We'll break them all down. So for our purposes, when we want to analyze these things, we want to look at the moment the foul occurs. So at this moment, a foul has occurred, and now we want to look at the 4 Ps. So we start by possession. So this is a good example of a clip where the player who was fouled doesn't have possession, but one of his teammates has the clear ability to gain possession because this player is on the ground. He's not getting up anytime soon, and all the other players in white are too far away to get to the ball before this guy does. So possession, or the clear ability to gain it, is present. The next thing we want to look at is personnel. What does our personnel look like? Well, we have this player on the ground, probably not going to get up anytime soon. If he does, he's still going to be behind this player. So really we have 1, 2 defenders against 1, 2, 3 attackers. So we would say is a 3-on-2. If this player gets up, this guy will probably get up as well, which means it's a 4-on-3. So that's a good numerical advantage for this team to have. The next thing is potential for an attack. Potential for an attack is where we talk a lot about space, time, and options. Is there space for this player to attack into, and does the player have options? And in this case, as he gets the ball, the answer is clearly yes. Tons of space to attack into, and he's got players who can get going and provide some options for him. So the potential for attack is clearly there. And the last P is proximity to goal. Here we are in the attacking third, probably 5 or 8 yards outside the penalty area. definitely good proximity to goal. So all 4 P's are present. Definitely a scenario where we want to let them continue on with play and show an advantage. This is also a low-risk foul. It's not a big, hefty challenge. It's just a simple foul there, not much in it. We can play advantage here, plenty of options. So this is a good use of advantage. Questions on that analysis? Okay, move us on to the next one then. So that's all we have here. Watch it one more time, and then we'll analyze it. So at the moment the foul occurs, we have a pushing foul by the defender in white against the player in blue. Commits the foul. So now let's talk about the 4 Ps. Possession, clearly, once again, the player fouled is not the player who gains possession, but player clearly gets it. Next one is personnel. We have 1, 2 against 1 and 2. So 2v2, probably a good attacking opportunity there. We want to let that go. Opportunity for potential for attack. This is where we talk about space, time, and options. Lots of space, lots of time, and does have an option who's making a run. The last thing we talk about is proximity to goal. Now, this one is a little bit different because the proximity is not as good as the last one that we saw. This is where the conversation about the ability or the technical skill of the personnel comes into play. So most cases, the older the players are, midfield, 2v2, yeah, let's go ahead and play advantage there. If these kids are 10, 8 years old, you know, there's a lot that happens between midfield and the goal for a 10-year-old. Maybe advantage isn't as present. So that's where the personnel can factor into that. But in this scenario, we've got a player running at speed, 2v2, plenty of space, plenty of time, has an option. The only thing that's maybe questionable is the proximity to goal, but with the older players, that's not as much of a problem. So this is another example of a positive use of advantage here, had the referee used it. This is another, actually I'm going to go back to this. This is another good example of a wait and see. In this clip, even though we don't normally talk about what referees do in the game, this referee chose to call a foul because this foul just kind of looks bad, right? This player's getting mauled a little bit. The referee doesn't wait to see. You can see there he's blowing the whistle as the player breaks free from it. So this is a scenario where, yeah, the player is getting fouled, but if these 2 players haven't been going at it all game, this is not too severe of a foul. It's just a careless foul, simple foul, pushing the back. You know, this is a low-risk foul to wait a second to see what happens. You can always call the foul later if you need to. So there's not a lot of severity to this foul, which means you can go ahead and just wait for just a second and see what happens. The referee does a wait and see here. He sees that player get the ball off to the races. Question here, also in front of the technical area, does that make you more likely to call it? You know, not really, because again, the severity of the foul is not very high. This is just a simple pushing foul. It's a holding foul, pushing foul. There's not enough severity for anybody to get really upset about this. Now, these players technical staff are not going to get upset because they can read the game and see this opportunity developing. So they're going to be calm for a couple minutes. If this player doesn't exist, then yeah, let's just call that foul really quickly because this player clearly isn't going to be able to turn out of that. And because of the proximity to the technical area, you know, it's potentially more dangerous. But this player is also there. They see it. So again, as long as the risk of the allowing play to continue is low, which in this case it was, we can go ahead and let it go for a second and see what happens. One more question. So when does the ref bring the ball back if not a score? No, not at all, actually. That's what we talked about with the phases of play. Once the referee decides, so again, the referee did not play advantage here, but once he decides to play advantage, this was the foul. This player getting the ball represents the advantage. So the advantage is now present. It has been realized. So if this player dribbles the ball up the field and then kicks it out of bounds, that's his problem. He had an advantage. He didn't make anything of it. So you don't get 2 bites at the apple on this one. The referee, once applying advantage, once the player gains it, advantage has been realized, off we go. We don't stop play if this player just misplays a ball or if they don't get a goal out of it. Another question here, in stoppage time, does that make any difference in the call? No, not at all. Whether or not you're in stoppage time is irrelevant. Really, the only thing you want to be careful about is if the severity of the foul or the general temperature of the game is up. That's the only real risk that you have. Time doesn't matter. Location on the field is less important when factoring whether or not to call a foul. Really, all it is just, is the temperature of the game up or is it down? And what is the severity of that foul? Moving us on to the next one. So this is another one where the referee has chosen to blow the whistle. Foul happens here, holds him, stumbles him up a little bit. Referee sees it, starts to blow the whistle. He waits for just another second. You have this player off to the races, clearly wanted to keep going because of this is a promising attack. So this is another example of, even in a highly unusual circumstance, this is coming out of the defensive penalty area. The foul happens here, just outside the penalty area, for a free kick coming out. But because of the age of the players and the technical ability of the players, one ball over the top, this guy's in behind the last defender, lots of space, has possession. This is a good opportunity to call advantage. Now, one could argue at the same time, it's in the 90th minute. The team who has been fouled is winning 1-0. Maybe they don't want the advantage. Maybe so. But in this case, the player clearly wanted to keep going. A player at this level is going to get the ball and either go directly to goal and try to score, or he's going to go all the way down in the corner and he's going to waste time, which is actually going to help him waste more time than if you call a foul back here at the top of the penalty area. So this is a good example where the age of the players and the technical ability of the players might be more meaningful than the location on the field. Because normally I would say never give advantage in the defensive third when the foul is coming out. Because why would you do that, right? But this is the one situation that is the exception to the rule, where if the referee doesn't blow the whistle, this attacker is off to the races with nobody to stop him. So we would hope to see advantage played here, even though the location of the field is not ideal. Any questions on some of those good examples of advantage? Terrence, I'm not sure I understand your question. If there is no stoppage, when do you award the foul? I'm not sure what you mean by that. If a foul occurs and you decide to play advantage, there is no stoppage and you don't award the foul. So I'm not sure that I understand the question. So if you want to rephrase that and clarify for me, I'd be happy to try to answer. All right, so now let's look at some examples where it's probably not ideal to use advantage. So here we have a foul that happens, again, in the defensive third. Foul's right there. Player gets the ball. We have to ask ourselves the 4 Ps. First of all, does he have possession? Yeah, he does. Secondly, what's the personnel? Well, let's fast forward a little bit and see. There's lots of defenders back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 against 1, 2. Probably not a great numerical advantage there. It's really rare for that last clip that we saw for a team to have a numerical advantage coming out of the defensive third. Very rare for that to happen. That fast break counterattack is probably the only time you're going to see it. So this is a scenario where the defenders far outweigh the attackers now. Next thing we have to look about is options. Potential for attack. But does this player have options? There's nobody up here to play the ball to. If there was, they're covered by the defenders. There's nobody forward to play the ball to. There's not a lot of space, as you can see here. Immediately condensed down. There's no space. There's no options, which is why this player loses the ball pretty much immediately. 5 defenders, 2 attackers, no space to go anywhere. The potential for attack is this, and this one is very low. And then, of course, the location on the field, position on the field, is very, very far from their own goal. So proximity to opponent's goal is very, very low. 3 of the 4 factors really are not present for us. So this would be a scenario where we would not want to play an advantage. And as you can see here, the referee signals an advantage to try to let him go ahead, recognizes it and goes, oops, shouldn't have done that, blows the whistle and puts the foul back. This is the frustration that not applying the wait and see causes for us. So they know that he's set advantage, he's played advantage, he's signaled advantage, so everybody thinks the game is continuing now. Now when it doesn't work out, he comes back and blows the whistle. This player gets frustrated. And technically speaking, if we're going to apply advantage, it means for that foul right there, and we're applying advantage for this player. So we decide when this player gets the ball, yes, an advantage is present, which I personally disagree with, but the referee decides, okay, this player has an advantage. Well, the player realizes the advantage and plays the ball. That's the next phase of play. So technically, he can't come back now and pull this advantage back because the next phase of play has continued on. And now if this player loses the ball, it's his fault because we have already applied advantage and it has already been realized. So that's why I say we have to be really careful with this, because at this moment, technically, we've applied advantage for number 6. He's taken it. He's played out of the advantage. Now we're off and going. We're back into live play. We technically shouldn't be able to come back and pull it back. Question here, under what circumstances do we consider game flow when looking at trifling fouls? I wouldn't call that foul trifling, first of all. And secondly, it's usually going to be in the middle third of the field or the attacking third of the field. And so area of the field is a big factor, Sonny, in what circumstances we consider for game flow. Little small trifling fouls in the middle third of the field, as long as the advantage is present, we can go ahead and let them go. We're going to talk in a minute about team advantage versus ball advantage, which is a really, really important topic to discuss. A question here, is a ref expected to take, say, like you said, it's the 90th minute and a team fouled has the lead, so they would want the foul to slow play and waste time. Usually, their body language is going to tell you what they want. So if a foul happens and their body language looks like they want to keep going, they're sprinting, they're dribbling, they're running hard, that body language would suggest they want the advantage. Go ahead and let them have it. If somebody is fouled and they're really not working hard, they're not looking like they want to keep playing, that's the signal to you that they'd rather have the foul. So a question here from Leah, the phase of play determines when advantage has been taken, not a certain amount of time. That is correct, yes. The better way to ask that question, I think, is when does an advantage end? And that's a pretty complicated question. It's more than what I want to get into here. But essentially, once you've applied advantage, if the player does something with that advantage, then that means the advantage has been realized and we move on. Which in this case, the player here on the ball now has received the advantage instead of the foul being called. He's made a pass forward. Technically, that phase of play we've moved on from now, which is why this was not a good advantage for this referee to have played. All right, Richard, this is the second time you're going to ask this question, so I'm going to say it a little bit more definitively here. The question is, if the person fouled keeps the ball but does not score the goal, the ref brings it back to where the foul happened. The answer is 100% absolutely not. I've said it twice now. If you apply advantage, the advantage is realized by the player continuing play, not a result. not an outcome, not a goal. Technically speaking, in this clip we're looking at, this player, the moment right here, is right here for whether or not we call advantage. That player has been fouled. We have to decide if this player has an advantage. If we decide yes, he does, and we say advantage, it's done. And whatever he does with the ball now is his problem. If he can't go down and score a goal a minute later, 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, how do you determine that? We don't say, okay, by the way, he didn't really get advantage because he didn't score a goal, so now we're going to come back. It doesn't say we're going to give you a goal or otherwise you get the foul. It says, do you have an advantage? Do you have the opportunity for an attack? It's not a guaranteed outcome. So you say you meant the player on the ground. It's irrelevant. I don't know what you're talking about. It's irrelevant. If you award advantage, it means the play continues and then it's done. It doesn't matter what outcome they get. If you apply advantage, what they do with the ball next is their problem, not yours. Question here, that's why, or a comment, that's why many fans expect for us to call the foul, because some of the referees do that. Exactly. Yep. So again, once you apply advantage, this is what makes advantage really sticky and really difficult to deal with. Once you apply advantage, technically it's applied, particularly if the player gets the ball and moves into that next phase of play. It means whatever happens next is their problem. You've evaluated the situation. You've decided that it's to their best interest to not have a foul awarded. And in this case, with the screenshot we're looking at now, you've decided as a referee that it is in this player's best interest for you not to stop play and call a foul, because you think he has possession of the ball, he's got a personnel advantage, he's got a promising attacking opportunity, and his proximity to goal is such that he can create a good attack. If you think all those four things are true, then you apply advantage. What he does with that advantage is his problem, not yours. So he doesn't get a second bite at the apple. Once you've decided an advantage is present, what he does with it is his problem, not yours. If he dribbles, I mean, we see this all the time, right? You give advantage, a player goes on 1v1 with the goalkeeper, but he misses. That's his problem, not yours. You don't go back and award the foul after he takes a shot on goal and misses. That's his problem. He had an advantage. You gave it to him. He just didn't take advantage of it. That's his problem. All right, moving along now. Another example. So this is an example of player who has the ball, gets fouled right there, gets pushed in the back. And we have to decide if he has an advantage. So we're going to pause it there and say at this moment in time, does he have an advantage? So we have to ask ourselves, does he have possession of the ball? Yes, he does. What's the personnel look like? Well, if you fast forward just a second, you can see it's not great. He's basically by himself, right? It's 1-on-3 at least. There's another defender coming, so probably 1-on-4. So no, he does not have a personnel advantage. The next thing is the potential for an attack. That is very low because, again, if we're thinking about space and we're thinking about options, this player has nowhere to go. He doesn't have any other teammates making runs. He has no space to play. It's why he ends up having to turn back. Tons of pressure, nowhere to go. So no, there's no potential for attack. And then the last one is proximity to goal. Here we are in the middle at midfield. So this is, again, why we probably don't want to have an advantage here, because while the foul is trifling, it's just a little nudge in the back, and he keeps his feet. Once he regains his feet, he doesn't really have anywhere to go with the ball. So this would be a case where the referee would do a quick scan, see that the personnel is not really to this player's advantage, and just blow the whistle here. Instead, he does a wait and see, and once he starts dribbling backwards, the referee blows the whistle. So correctly awarded foul, but at the end of the day, we would hope to see by this moment right here that he doesn't have anywhere to go, and we would just go ahead and call the foul. So a question here, if advantage doesn't materialize, you call it back. I would say advantage was never present. That's the key distinguisher, is that the advantage was never actually present. Question here, in this clip, does the phase of play change when he cuts backwards? No, it's still the same player on the ball. And a comment here from Jeff, not everybody's gonna be able to see it, but it's a good one. If advantage doesn't materialize, you should know relatively quickly and you'd stop play. That's correct. So if you wanted to have a slow whistle here, that would be okay. He gets nudged in the back, scan for a second, nope, nowhere to go, blow the whistle, no problem. But it shouldn't go on as long as it did, because as you can see here, he gets fouled. 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000, 5, 1,000. Right there, you finally. So it's 5 seconds after the foul. That's way too long. When in particular in this situation, you can see he doesn't really have anywhere to go. All of his attackers are marked. No space. There's nowhere to go. This needs to be a much quicker foul called here. On to the next one. So this is where we talk about severity of foul. I'll play it one more time and let you watch it. So at this moment right down here, player's pinned in. We have a scissor tackle, puts him to the ground. Back leg sweeps, we got a scissor tackle. That's what I would consider a higher level of severity. And so then we have to look and say, okay, is the advantage good enough that I'm going to risk letting this kind of foul go uncalled for the time being? So we have to ask ourselves, at this moment in time is when we decide the advantage. What's the personnel look like? It's 2 on 3, maybe 3 on 4, because if this player's in, then so is that player. Maybe it's a 3 on 3. The second is the personnel. Sorry, we talked about personnel. We talked about possession that's present. The third is potential for an attack. This is where we have to think a little bit. This player is facing away from his goal. They're nearly at midfield. His only option is to go backwards at this point. This would be a case where the factors present, in my opinion, aren't strong enough to avoid calling this foul. And as you can see here, they have to turn. They have to be a couple more phases of play before the real actual advantage happens. And then it doesn't end up even happening. So that's why I think at the end of the day, when you see a foul like this, unless that player right before he got fouled put a through ball in where someone's going into a clear and obvious attack, just call the foul here. Because that's a reckless challenge, needs to be a yellow card. And as you can see here, if we play it for just another second, the referee actually starts to go with the hand to the pocket. He was going to pull the yellow card out here and respond to this. He waits for a second. See, he's already reaching for the yellow card. He was going to give a yellow card there. But instead, he sees this develop and decides to wait a second and let play continue. So this is a wait and see scenario where he waits for the next phase of play, which is right now, and he says, okay, we can give advantage. So that's right now we're deciding, again, when we analyze phases of play, number 15 gets fouled as he plays the ball to number 9. So what we have to do is decide, is it more advantageous for number 9 to get to play advantage, or do we call the foul? And at this moment in time, maybe, but I don't think it's still worth letting that yellow card challenge go, particularly if that happens to be in front of the technical area. I don't think it was in this case, but if that's in front of the technical area, there's no chance you should apply advantage there. Get in there, blow the whistle, because you're going to escalate. Question here, can he go back and give the yellow card? Absolutely. He has played advantage here. As soon as the ball goes out of play, he can come back and award the yellow card. Another example. So this is a subtle one. You have to see what happened here with the foul. This player tries to do a give and go. Watch what happens to her. Stay up here. Watch. Keep your eyes up here. Player does a give and go. She's in behind. This player on the ground realizes it, reaches out, grabs her foot, and trips her. So she's down. Now is when we talk about, do we want to give this player advantage? Because that's the decision, right? This player has the ball. Do we think an advantage is present and we can let this player play on? So when we talk about the first thing, possession, yep, clear possession. Second is personnel. One attacker was there, but she's on the ground now as a result of the foul. So really the only other attacker involved is here. There's a lot of defenders around. So there's no personnel advantage at this point. The next and the major factor we have to talk about is the opportunity for a potential attack. And right now, she plays negative. She goes backwards. She's got no options, partly because the referee's in the way. There's nothing for this player to do except to go negative with the ball, which is not advantageous. Which brings me to something that a lot of referees do that we need to stop doing. We equate possession of the ball, no matter what, to advantage. And as you can see here, this referee says advantage. Advantage. This is not advantage. Just keeping the ball, having possession of the ball by itself is not advantage. Again, if this moment in time when he's choosing to signal advantage, let's talk about it. Do we have a personnel advantage? Of course not. We have possession, but we don't have a personnel advantage. We're 50 or 60 yards from goal, and we don't have any time, space, or options in an attacking direction, which means really at least 2, if not 3 of the considerations for advantage are not present. The only one that's there is the ball. They have the ball. So we have to stop equating a team keeping possession with advantage, because we see it a lot. We see teams get fouled. Sonny, those trifling fouls you were talking about in the midfield, they get fouled, they play the ball back to the center back, and they keep knocking along in the back. That's not advantage. We don't want to give advantage for that. We're better off calling the foul and making sure they know that that unfair contact is not going to be allowed, because this is not a situation where advantage exists. Yes, they keep the ball. Yes, maybe no one cares, although I would argue that's a tactical foul warning of a yellow card. But if that's a trifling foul, maybe they care, maybe they don't if you blow the whistle. But there's no advantage present here. And they would be better off, frankly, with a free kick from right here, because they would dump that ball into the penalty area and have some sort of a decent attacking opportunity. So let's make sure, as we're moving forward, that we're not equating simple possession, no matter where it is, with having an advantage. Any questions on that concept of ball advantage versus team advantage? It's not advantage. It's not enough to just have the ball for there to be an advantage. Another example. So this is a scenario where the team in white has the ball. The orange player is committing the foul. This is not a scenario where we want to apply advantage. At the moment this white player gets fouled, he's facing his own goal, a solid 70 yards from his attacking goal. His back is to the attacking goal. He's under pressure. His only option is to play negative. Why would you make him try to play through that? The referee applies a wait and see, allows him to get fouled, plays there, and then recognizes this guy has nowhere to go. So the safer thing to do, particularly in the 87th minute in a 3-1 game, is if you've got a player in midfield being driven backwards, facing their own goal, being fouled, just call the foul. So much easier to just call the foul here. There's no reason to even wait and see, because there's no chance anywhere in this scenario that anybody has the things that are present for advantage. Yeah, they may have the ball, but they don't have a personnel advantage. They don't have any kind of potential for attack, and their proximity to the goal is really far. So this is a case where just a quick, simple foul here is going to help this team keep possession. This player will back off, and you get the game restarted. So again, no need to wait and see in this kind of scenario where someone's back is to their attacking goal and there's tons of players around. So you can see here, even then he hasn't called it. He's still waiting, and he doesn't call advantage, or excuse me, he doesn't call the foul until the play gets turned over. That's technically incorrect because this player was fouled here. Once he plays the ball and the referee says, okay, I'm not going to call a foul, he has decided that this player, it's to their advantage for him not to blow the whistle now. So that player gets the ball, obviously doesn't have anywhere to go, and so he makes a pass. Technically, that advantage was realized, even though it was never present. If the referee was choosing to play advantage, we're now into the next phase of play. The next pass is the next phase of play. So that's why I said for you to give advantage in the middle third of the field, it needs to be like one of those first couple we looked at where there's tons of space, clearly a player who wants to run into the attack, and not a scenario like this. I'm going to run through these quickly just because we're at the end of our time here, but I think it's worthwhile to see. These are some good examples of wait and see. Foul committed. Great body language from the referee. So we have the foul committed right here. Good position, sees it well, turns. He puts the whistle up, you can see him, but then he scans the field, sees that not only does this player have time and space, but she's also got that player out there who's wide open, and says, okay, I'm going to give advantage. And he actually turns back to the player and says advantage so that she knows there's a reason he didn't call that foul. And you can see him saying, look, I'm going to give you advantage. I'm going to give you advantage. Just right there. He's turning back to her and saying advantage, 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 because we've got 1, 2, 3 against 1, 2, 3, space, time, options, personnel is good, skill set of the players is good. This is an opportunity for an attacking play to develop. So that's why he says, I'm going to give you advantage here. And now look what we have. 1, 2, 3, 4 against 1, 2, 3, 4. Lots of space, lots of options. So this is a good wait and see what happens, recognizes the space is there, lets them keep going. Another wait and see. So this is a good one in that at this moment back here on the aerial challenge, we have a foul here. Referee thinks about it for a second, waits. You can see here he was about to blow the whistle because he didn't think it was going to develop. So he waits a second. Once he sees that space, sees that an advantage can develop, now he gives this player an advantage, and we're off to the races. And then that player gets fouled again, and that's why he gives the foul. So he comes back and gives a foul for the second foul, not the original one back there. So another good example of just waiting when the ball's in the middle of the field here. Foul happens here. I'm going to wait and see what happens for a second. Boom. Yep. Okay, we can play advantage. And then once he plays advantage, the player gets held here. And now he does another wait and see, recognizes that no advantage can be developed there, and comes back and awards the foul. That's a Cal North referee for what it's worth. So a very good couple of wait and sees. And the last one. This would be a scenario where you wouldn't want to see a wait and see. Again, the foul happens there. Once this player gets the ball, he's 1 on 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, he's got the ball, and yeah, he's got proximity, but the potential for the attack is really low. Referee is already signaling advantage, so we'd want to see a wait and see maybe for a second, but more than likely, once you realize this player is not going to be able to do anything with the ball, let's just call the foul. So I want to test what we've done tonight to see what we think about advantage. So I'm going to play one clip. I'm going to put a poll up, and I want to know what you think. Here we go. That's it. Foul happens right there. Now let's decide, should we give this player an advantage? Knowing what we see right here. All right, I'm going to launch the poll. Tell me what you think. All right. And you guys are correct. 91% say no, this is not an advantage. Well done. Again, when we talk about the 4 Ps, yeah, he's got possession of the ball. But as we can see right here, the personnel is a nightmare. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 defenders against 2 attackers. Far from goal, no options, no opportunity to create an attack. So this is a good scenario of a team who has the ball. They have possession, but it's not really to their advantage because there's nothing they can do with it here. This guy dribbles the ball up. He has to slow down and wait because there's just nobody. And now they end up playing. So definitely not a situation where an advantage was present. Nice job getting that one right. So I'm going to bring us to a close. I thank you for joining this evening. I'm sorry for going 7 minutes over, but we had a good subject here to talk about. So thanks for hanging in there, and everybody have a very good night.